of poetry that's just been published from the Soviet Union. Shikadriz was the poet, and he suggested that I write music, because he knew that I was doing that, to one of those poems, which I did. And in fact, that poem, that song, was included in the Mlota collection, and I believe it was the only contemporarily written song, contemporarily composed song, that was included in their canon of Yiddish song. The song I want to begin with is another song from Shikadriz that I wrote as a 20-something-year-old, 22-year-old. It's called Efsher Ya und Efsher Nein. And this will give you an idea of the composing style that I had at the time, which I must say is not that different from the style I have now. What's changed over the years, we'll get to after I sing you this song. So let me share my screen, and I'll put the words up here. Okay. Are we seeing the screen well enough? Yes, with the words? Okay. So what attracted me to this song is the irony, the deep irony. And my father, from whom I learned many Yiddish songs and was of course, my first song teacher, had a soft spot for humorous songs. So I think I was attracted to this. And over the years, I've grown. I mean, I'll see what you all think, but I've grown very fond of the metaphor here for Soviet Jewry, but also, well, you'll see what you think. Yeah. It's a story, and
Josh,
yes.
Can you hear me? So we
Yes.
have some requests. I apologize for interrupting you. We
Yeah.
have some requests whether it might be possible to try to adjust the camera a tiny bit. It's coming in a little bit less focused than in the past.
Okay.
We won't worry about it too much, but it's already a tiny bit better there.
Okay.
And yeah, I would say go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the sound is okay? We're
fantastic. Yeah.
we're good on the clear. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and sing this. I may pause a bit in the middle to get the next slide up. I apologize for that, but it won't be long if I do. Ja, given as a chochem, sie nit given. Ja, geschehen as a meise, sie nit geschehen. Kann ich euch nicht sagen, ich weiß es nicht allein. Efter ja und efter nein. Nur Menschen sich schweren, als in einem Ort. Sie wischen, hat sie Platz und Brot und Brot. Und nachem der Chochem, der Senbrei bei, wie es liegt in a Welt, a Kuppe mit Schnee, dabei von a Lächel, von unterm Schnee, ist gegangen a Paare wie von Tee, ist gegangen a Paare wie von Tee. Ja, gewähnt, sie nicht gewähnt, in a Wald a Kuppe Schnee. Ja, gegangen, sie nicht gegangen, a Paare wie von Tee. Kann ich euch nicht sagen, ich weiß es nicht allein. Efter ja und efter nein. Nur eingesparte Menschen sagen als Reb noch, hat vertreut dem Chidesh, Berle dem Chochem, hat Berle gesagt ihm, ich kann es nicht verstehen, Azam in größen Meufes, darf man sein allein, me darf, sagt reinkriechen in der Kuppe Schnee, und ich sage von den Nemser, a Paare wie von Tee, und ich sage von den Nemser, a Paare wie von Tee. Ja, gekrochen Berl, sie nicht gekrochen Berl, kann ich euch nicht sagen, ich weiß es nicht allein, öfter ja und öfter nein. Nur a Stadt mit Menschen, sagen, wenn Sommer war, mir hat gebracht zum Trocken und a Kopf sein Wein. Und gefragt, mir hat sie, Chachem ist der von Stott, sie kannst du nicht ermannen sich, a Kopf hat vermocht. Hat sie stark vertracht sich, erklärt sich und gesagt, a Berdele gedenke, oi hat mein Mann vermocht. A Berdele gedenke, hat mein Mann vermocht. Beim Zimmers fleckt das Treißeln sich und in Nüchtern in Tor. Ja, gewähnt, sie nicht gewähnt, a Berdele in Tor. Ja, gehabt, sie nicht gehabt, hat auf sich a Kopf. Kann ich euch nicht sagen, ich weiß es nicht allein, öfter ja und öfter nein. Kann ich euch nicht sagen, ich weiß es nicht allein, öfter ja und öfter nein. Okay, that's Chickatrez. Commentary on just what? We'll leave to discussion later if you care to. But it does remind me of a banner I saw when the Soviet Union was beginning to totter. And there was a big demonstration, a big crowd coming over one of the bridges in Moscow, I believe. And the banner read, 70 years on the road to nowhere. And so I thought of that banner, and I thought of this song by Chickatrez, who's asking whether the Bechele and Nachum the Wise actually had a head on his shoulders or not. So that's an example of a song where I found the text, and most of the songs that we're familiar with from the 20th century were composed on texts by other poets or other writers. And that continued to be the practice through most of the 20th century. Younger people who were beginning to write songs would find texts and set them. In my songwriting career, a big turn came in the middle 90s, I would say, the early 90s. And I'll take a moment to talk about that. Yiddish was not my first language. The language of my home growing up for ordinary conversation was English, but Yiddish was a cultural language that we spoke at the dinner table once or twice a week. In fact, always on Friday evening, we would speak Yiddish at the dinner table. My parents, Jeffrey mentioned in his introduction the Shalom Aleichem Folk Institute, which had a whole series of educational institutions. And among them was what was called a Jugendverein, a youth organization. And this youth organization was exactly where my parents met each other and had a whole chevra, many of whom were also campers and staff members at Camp Beiberich, which was part of this whole net. So they were very, very strong advocates of Yiddish, but we didn't speak Yiddish as our primary language, as I say. However, my grandparents were Yiddish speakers who had come over from Europe, were born in Europe. And I remember very well my father, what we call code switching, when he would speak with his mother and father on the phone, for example, he would speak Yiddish with them, and he would speak a Polish Yiddish because that was their dialect. When speaking with us kids, he would speak Klal Yiddish because that's the Yiddish that he studied in the Shalom Aleichem institutions. And that's the Yiddish that I learned as a kid going to the shul. And so I absorbed a certain amount of Yiddish this way. And in particular, I was a sponge for learning songs, as you can imagine. My father was a marvelous singer. My grandparents, everyone in the family had a song. That was their song. And I remember my mother's father, for example, singing a Goldfaden song that is nothing like the notated version, but a folklorized version, a wonderful one, etc. So that was sort of the background from my home. Then there was Camp Beiberich, which had a great deal of singing. And I eventually became the singing counselor. And as the singing counselor, I was responsible, as I was saying before, for writing new songs, but the words were not mine. The words were written when there were new words to be written. They were written by the Jewish culture counselor, and in my case, it was Fischel Kolko, the aforementioned. And I developed a very close relationship with Fischel. I used to treasure in the winter going over to his apartment in the Bronx and getting an egg salad sandwich and talking over what was going to happen in the summer and planning all of the events and the festivals and so forth. And that's how Fischel came to know that I wrote songs. And that's why he suggested that I look at this volume of poetry that had just come out in 1967, I think, was the publication date. Now, what happened in the 1990s that turned me into a lyricist as well as a composer? Well, I was in a marriage and raising kids in Yiddish. So the language of our home as a parent was Yiddish. And I had met my wife of the time in the Yiddishist circles. And we began communicating in Yiddish as our day-to-day language. So that changed everything. And by the time I was in my 40s, I felt like there were things I wanted to say in a song that had to do with now, with my life then, either personal things or current affairs things. And that's I started writing songs. I'd always written songs, but writing now with words. And that was the genesis of the first CD, Crossing the Shadows. And from that time on, I felt, I would say, inspired by Bela Schechter Gottesman, who was probably the most well-known and the most prolific and most admired Yiddish songwriter of original songs, both lyrics and music, in the latter half of the 20th century. And Bela, I came to learn, had actually had a similar path to me, because she had written some poetry, but she wasn't much of a musician, of a composer. And yet when she went to teach in the shulas, she had to bring songs into the presentations. And of course, songs are very important in education. And that kind of lit her fire. And she began to also write personal songs about current events, but things that are related to our world. You know, I'm thinking of a song that we used to sing at Biberich, where at the end of the season, each group would make a gift to the camp to leave it for future summers. And the song had a line in it, "Gut zu losen unser Simen as wir haben da gelebt." Is good to leave a sign that we have lived here. And I think that sentiment is what drove me, not only to set texts that had been written 50 years earlier, or even earlier than that, or even 5 years earlier, but in a completely different world, but to write songs that would leave a siman as a chada gelebt, and be something for those who come after and those who are listening now and those who hear music and go to hear music. So I'm going to jump to the next song of the program, which is Good Morgen. Now here the size, let me see if I can okay. So are we seeing the text, and is it large enough to read? Okay.
It is.
Yeah,
It is. And
it's
Josh, when you
Yes.
finish, and for the talk, when you finish the discussion part of the song, feel free to also unshare the song so we see you larger.
Okay. So this is a song that I wrote in about 2012 or 13, somewhere in there. And here's the genesis of this song. I was taking I live in Brooklyn, and I was working at the time in Manhattan. So in the morning, I would take the train, which passes over the East River. And it's a very beautiful and inspiring scene to pass over on your way to starting your day. And I just felt that uplift that particular morning. And there is in the New York City subway system a signal, a chime, which tells you that the doors are about to close. When you've stopped at a station, the doors open, and then when they're about to close, there's a warning chime that goes ding dong, ding dong, like that. And that was my musical inspiration for this song, which is Guten Morgen. So I'm going to sing it for you, and we can discuss it later. I can say a few words about it, but let me just first sing it so that you get an idea what, let's see, 70, 30, about 40 years later, what kind of a song I was writing. All right. I guess I won't get the last verse in. Okay. Good morning. That's the chime. Dum dum. Good morning. Good morning. Sollst nicht haben, was zu leihen und zu sorgen. Gefinnen sollst du keuchen, zu schwimmen gegen Strom. Und haben von Gebigkeit, mekadisch seine Yom Yom. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam-Bai. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam-Bai. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam. Klingt das Glockel, Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam. Klingt das Glockel. Im Lachschaft, Matai. Passagieren, Passagieren. Es sind offen nach der Regen und die Tieren. Dein Stanzchen nicht versammeln, nicht wer versteckt in Ohr. Nimm fest in Hand dein Päckl und halt in Herz dein Wort. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam-Bai. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam-Bai. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam. Klingt das Glockel, Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam. Klingt das Glockel. Im Lachschaft, Matai. Auf Relsen wir fahren, und es fliehen vorbei die Wochen und die Jahren. Nicht wichtig ist, medaktig sein in ausmestendem Moos. Der Iker, die Kavonne, verwärmen und verwurst. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam-Ba. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam-Ba. Mechadisch sein dem lebendigen Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam. Klingt das Glockel, Bim-Bam, Bim-Bam. Klingt das Glockel. Im Lachschaft, Matai. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. Okay, so that's good morning. And this, here's my chance for a plug. This is one of the songs on, it's actually the title song. The focus is off because it's not a face. Okay, there's a wonderful booklet and a CD, Passagieren, passengers. The booklet has words and images for each of the 6 songs. And if you're interested in purchasing a CD, you can write to me. Maybe Karen will put my email address in the chat, and with subject line passenger CD, and let me know if you would like to purchase a copy. I'll mail it out to you. I don't yet have a website all set up. My time is completely absorbed with the Volksbühne show that's coming up. All right, so you see that those of you who are familiar with Yiddish songs will see some of the sources of various parts of this. Guten Morgen, sollst nicht haben was zu leihen, was zu sorgen, is an expression I heard from family members. It's just it's like a folk saying, I guess. It's a kind of like Cockney slang greeting. And someone once asked me about Imloach Shav, why I didn't put that in the Ashkenazi pronunciation of the song. It's because I first heard it in a song from one of the, I think, Zionist songs of the 20s or 30s, and that's the way it was in my ear. So yeah, so that's the way I put it in the song, because this was me. That's how it came into my song world. And the whole idea of the name of God being Bim Bam is also one that we find in songs. So I use that strategy, songwriting strategy, lyric writing strategy. And now I want to move to a song that comes from where I drew the material from a biblical story. This is one of the songs that's in Platham Zusammen. It's called De Hebenszwei, the two midwives. And so I wanted to look at this story, which is, I was looking for something, and I remembered this, of course, from the Haggadah, story of two midwives who refused the decree from Pharaoh to kill male infants. And that was their way of resisting. This song was written in 2019 in the midst of the Trump regime, where this particular issue, I think, came to the fore, at least in my mind. And I have to say, there were two other sources of inspiration for this song. One was, I don't know how many of you know Tom Lehrer, the wonderful songwriter, who has a line in one of his songs, even in Egypt, the pharaohs had to import Hebrew braceros. And that's just way in the background of my mind, because I'm a great admirer, as many people are, of Tom Lehrer's lyrics. But the idea that the Jewish people in Egypt were essentially foreign laborers that were doing the work, just like the braceros. And so in the Trump era, that kind of focused me on this particular story. The other thing, which is kind of grisly, warning, I listened to an interview at one point working on film with Ben Ferencz, who was a US Army prosecutor in Germany after the Second World War. And after the Nuremberg trials, he was involved in trying Nazi criminals that were found in the population when they were still doing that. And he recounted a time when he spoke with an SS officer. And he asked the guy, why did you kill infants? What was the purpose there? What was in your head as you were doing this grisly, horrific thing? And the answer was, well, we knew that these babies were going to grow up and fight against our regime. And that answer kind of stunned me. But then I'm reading in Yehoish, and you can see the part that I highlighted, maybe. The familiar phrase, I remember this from our seders always, is "Aufgestanden ein neuer Melech über Mitzrayim, was hat nicht gekannt Yosef." All right, we remember that's how the Pesach story begins. Und hat gesagt zu sein Volk, excuse me, seht, das Volk von Kindern von Israel ist mehrer und starker von uns. Kommt, lassen wir sich kriegen gegen ihn, dem Volk, ja. Und nicht wird sich mehren, und es wird sein, als wenn es wird sich treffen am Milchome, wird euch zustehen zu unserem Feind.
Josh,
Oder wird Milchome halten. Excuse me?
Could you translate quickly for the non?
Okay. All right. Yeah, maybe I'll just read that first part in English. So basically the Pharaoh is understanding that the Jewish people in his country, in his land, are multiplying. And he's afraid that if an enemy comes against the Pharaoh from outside of the nation, that these Jewish slaves will side with the enemy. And that's a danger. So there was the point of contact with that story I just told you. All right, I won't read the rest in Yiddish, but basically the Pharaoh decides to tell the midwives that if a Hebrew woman gives birth to a male child, that they should kill the child. And if it's a female child, they should let the child live. And this then concentrates on two midwives whose names, well, you'll hear in the song, and you'll hear their response to this decree comes directly out of the biblical story. But I tried to write it in such a way that it would resonate with 2019. And unfortunately, it continues to. So give me a moment. I'm going to actually play the, whoops. Are we seeing the performance now?
No,
No. Okay.
we're seeing you higher.
Okay. So new share. Here we go.
Mhm. There's no sound, Josh.
There's no sound.
We're not hearing the sound.
Okay, hold on. All right. I need some technical help here. Share sound. Okay. All right. And it begins a bit quietly, so let me advise you to turn up your own computer's volume as we hear this.
Hat sich mir gedacht, als so viel Immigranten, hat sich das Volk versklavt. Es wächst in Soll und es wächst in Kraft, zu viel Immigranten. Als der Feind wird bringen sein Armee, weil die Sklaven gehen mit See, und gegen mir, und gegen mir. Ungetreue Immigranten. Dies will ich sich kriegen gegen sie, eider es wär zu spät. Ich gib euch an einem Befehl, a blutigen Zar von a mächtigen Haar. Tomer geboren wird werden a Kind, was keiner Sellner sein. Nimm es und harg es leicht und geschwind, und warf es gleich in Gruberei. Es wird nicht Kasellner sein. Nimm es und harg es leicht und geschwind, und warf es gleich in Gruberei. Es wird nicht Kasellner sein. Da-da-da-da-da, da-da. Da ya da 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 dam dum da da dam dum da dam dum. Es wird nicht Kasellner sein. Der Gesang fällt schwer auf Hebens Zweig, das Täten kimpet Kinder, holt ja raus an Eigebot, doch im Himmel sitzt der Gott, sieh doch Hanna Weire, nur bei Mames von a Sklavenvolk, und was stammen nicht von hier, wie tut man wie, wie tut man wie? Wer wollt uns geführt, die Gseire? Is lang mir dem Haar, der langen Alloi, Loi mit an alle verloi. Und gib ihm a Teres als a nitige Freu, Kindl zu schnell, eider Boss, eider Wenn, haben die Hebens gemacht, a Zoi, und aufgenarrt dem Haar. Haben ungenarrt Kind noch Kind, und nicht gefallen in Sinterein, a Mensch, darf ein Mensch nur sein. Hab ni Mäus genarrt Kind nur Kind, und nicht gefallen sind da rein. A Mensch darf a Mensch nur sein. Ja da 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 da. Ai da 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 da. Ja da 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 da. Ai da da da. Ai da da. A Mensch darf a Mensch nur sein. Pare ist der Haar gewählt, in Mitzrayim ist das geschehen. Schifre und Pue, die heben's zwei, sing a Lied, lekovet sei. Schifre und Pue, sei a Mensch und nicht mit Besen geh. Kein sei stark wie an Armee, wie an Armee, wie an Armee. Schifre und Pue, sie haben dem Haar, der langt alloi, loi mit an alle verloi. Gegeben nach Terez als a nietige Freu, Kindl zu schnell, eider was, eider wenn, haben die Hebens gelacht, azoi, und aufgenarrt dem Haar. Haben die Mais genarrt Kind noch Kind, und nicht gefallen in sind rein. A Mensch darf a Mensch nur sein. Hab niemals genarrt Kind noch Kind und nicht gefallen sind rein. A Mensch darf a Mensch nur sein. Ja da 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 da. Ai da 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 da. Ja da 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 da. Da 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 no, I die dam boy, I die da. A Mensch darf a Mensch nur sein. Amor hat sich a Haar gedacht, a so viel Immigranten.
Okay, are we back? Am I back on your screens? Yes.
We are. Josh, it's Karen. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I just, if I understand correctly, we were watching a performance by the amazing Sasha Luria from the 2019 premiere of your song cycle of new Yiddish songs at Weimar Yiddish Festival in the summer of 2019. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Can I take this moment to ask you to tell the audience more about the program, the song cycle, Pleitem Zusammen, or Refugees Together, which is actually, and I just want to congratulate you, is going to premiere here in the United States in March as a project of through Folksbina, but of the Center for Traditional Music and Dance.
Yes, Center for Traditional Music and Dance is helping
a bit about this program and sort of its origin.
Yes. So in the summer of 2019, Yiddish Summer Weimar, which is a big festival in Weimar, Germany, of Yiddish culture and particular music, commissioned a number of new works, partly with government funding. It was a big project. And they invited me to to write a song cycle that would be a full program. And most of the material, actually all of the other material in that festival were based on texts or music and texts from between the wars, from the 30s. In Germany, in Berlin in particular, there was a flowering of Yiddish culture. There was a lively scene of Yiddish culture. And I said, I'd love to write a new song cycle, but only if I can write it referring to 2019. I don't want to write about 1919 or 1939. And they said, okay. So that was the origin of this song cycle, which is now going with the help of Center for Traditional Music and Dance and the Volksbühne and a number of other, in fact, the Evo in New York has contributed to the expense of putting this on. And I will invite anyone in the audience who's moved to do so to help us bring Sasha and the rest of the troupe over from Europe. We have an ensemble of 10 performers. 5 of them come from overseas. So we've raised a good amount of money, and we still need a little more. So that's my plug. But also, if you happen to be within striking distance of New York City, this will not be broadcast. It'll be recorded, so we'll have an audio recording for later. But if you happen to be within striking distance, March 26th, a Sunday, zwischen Purim and Pesach, there will be 2 performances at the Volksbühne, the Museum of Jewish Heritage. There's a hall there, Safra Hall. And as you saw, the performers were on book, as we say, because many of the songs had just been finished and we had very little rehearsal time. This time it will be a theatrical concert. Jane Levison has written the book for this, and
You just went mute. Josh, you just went mute.
am I back? Okay. So yes, it'll be a theatrical concert, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And I invite you to, let me just mention some of the performers, because you may be familiar with some of them. Daniel Kahn will be performing. Many of you may know Daniel. Sveta Kundish will be performing. Sasha Luria, who you just saw, and Paulina Shepard, who's a marvelous singer, originally born in Siberia and came by way of Kazakhstan, I believe, to England, where she now lives. And we have instrument, and myself, I'll be singing as well. Brooklyn. And we have a number of instrumentalists that you may also be familiar with, some of them. Ilya Schneeves, Deborah Strauss, Jake Schulman-Ment, Merlin Shepard, a marvelous clarinetist, amazing. And Beth Silver will be coming down from Toronto. So we have an amazing star-studded program. And well, you just saw Sasha perform, so you have an idea. I think Karen is putting into the chat 2 links. One of them is if you're interested in buying tickets, and another one is for if you're interested in donating. All donations are very gratefully accepted, large and small. And this song cycle has been the thing which has kind of absorbed my energies for a couple of years now, because trying to get it to come forward from Weimar. So that's about the song cycle, about the song concert.
Gosh,
I don't know.
We have time for another song. It's
Okay.
presentations and with the context are fascinating, and let's let you fit in one more before we have to, well,
Okay.
go to a few question and answer session, but go
Okay,
ahead.
then I'll just show everyone one passage from Yehosh, because this figures into the song, as you'll hear.
Yehoash is the poet who translated the Hebrew Tanakh into Yiddish, and that's what you were looking at that Josh put up.
Yes, thank you, Jeffrey. And by the way, Yehoash's grandson worked at Weiberick for a couple of summers. So Yehoash's language is marvelous. It's kind of, in a way, like the King James version of the Bible. It's very poetic. It's not necessarily following the original as closely as some scholars would quibble with, but it's a marvelous language. So 2021 was the murder of George Floyd. And I felt moved to write a ballad. It was about 10 days after the event. And I remember watching Reverend Al Sharpton talk at the funeral of George Floyd. And that's what inspired me to look at Yehoash for a little bit of language, which you'll hear. The passage here, mir hat dir gesagt, Mensch, was ist gut und was Gott verlangt von dir. You've been told, human being, what's good and what God requires of you. Nor bloß ton Gerechtigkeit. Those are the first four lines of what you're required to do. And I was very impressed by the two words nor and bloß, which mean roughly the same thing. But combined in this particular way, it was a very poetic phrase that I incorporated into the song. So because we're short on time, I won't say more. I will sing this for you. But let's see. There's a little bit of screen management here. Hold on a second. There we go. All right, this is also several different parts. So are you seeing the screen that has George Floyd on it? Was that a yes? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me see. All right, I'll have to do a little scrolling here. And by the way, you see Yiddish Singing Society at the top of the screen. I run a weekly sing every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're interested in joining that, we do it on Zoom. You can also write me at that same email address and ask for the Zoom link. Okay, so this is one of the songs that we shared at the Yiddish Singing Society. The Italian, whoops, was there? I heard some kind of a noise. Was there a problem with sound?
It's good. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Der Italien ist gegangen, Hemd von Himmel blau, Und was verlangt von ihm sein Eberhard? Knien, knien und knien und knien. Der Knien ist zum Teil. Eus Knien von Gefangenen, das Leben und das Recht, weil es soll sein für alle Menschen, was ist Straf und was Verbrecht, was Verbrecht. Der Italien ist gegangen, ahem, von Himmel bläu. Der Italien ist gegangen, ahem, von Himmel bläu. Ein, da-da-din-dam, da-din-dam, da-di-dam, da-da-din-dam, da-din-dam, da-di. Der Unterling ist gegangen, unterschreiben den Bericht, und was verlangt von ihm sein Ebermann? Checker, 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 ois getrachte Meister. Verschreiben als der Gefangene hat sich entgegengestellt, weil jeder Eingeschworene wird das nehmen für gut Geld, gut Geld. Der Unterling ist gegangen, unterschreiben den Bericht. Der Unterling ist gegangen, unterschreiben den Bericht. Ein, da-da-din-dam, da-din-dam, da-di-dam, da-da-din-dam, da-din-dam, da-di. Die Vorbeigeher ist gegangen, der Sinn, was geht on. Und was verlangt von ihr der Eberste? Ede sein, der Ede sein, der Ede sein, der Ede sein, dem es zu fangen mit ihr Telefon. Ein Kritzen in Gewissen, dem einsofigen Moment, Abreißen von Amerika, die Maske von Gesetz, die Maske von Gesetz. Die Vorbeigeher ist gegangen, der Sinn, was geht on. Die Vorbeigeher ist gegangen, der Sinn, was geht on. Ein, da-da-din-dam, da-din-dam, da-di-da, da-da-din-dam, da-din-dam, da-di. Jeder Stob und Stiebel kommen nach euch in die Gas. Auf hele man Gegenstellniges in Treuer und in Kass. Und was verlangt von uns der Eberste? Nur bläust an Gerechtigkeit, nur bläust an Gerechtigkeit. Hab mit Eberrasse und der Rasse, wo schlappt sich dort zu dort. Hab mit Eberrasse und der Rasse, aufgehalten durch Terror. Mehr soll nicht sterben, keinem nicht, der rassistische Gebäude. Mehr nicht keine Lynchbandes, wo sie gehen, Himmelbläu, Himmelbläu. Von jeder Stub und Stiebele strömen aus in Gas. Von jeder Stub und Stiebele strömen aus in Gas. I la da didn't da didn't da da didn't da didn't
Thank you, Josh. Oh, thank you for sharing this very difficult and powerful lyrics and singing them for us. I want to invite Jeffrey to help us with a question and answer session. We've run to 1 hour and 15, but I want to give people a chance to talk with you, and I know Jeffrey does. Are you with us, Jeffrey?
Yes, I'm here.
There are, for those who haven't done it before, at the bottom of your screen, under Zoom, there's a reactions. Feel free to raise your hand.
I
And
can't.
we'll call
Where
on
am
it.
I? Hold on.
We'll fit in it.
Let me
Jeffrey, did
find
you want,
myself, first of all.
Jeffrey, did you want me to go ahead and take questions, or do you want to go ahead and take
I'll
them?
do it, as long as people don't care that they don't know who's asking it. First of all, we'd like to do question and answer with Josh. I want to set some parameters that the questions should be brief and to the point. And if there are any statements, they should be the same. Please limit what you say and what you ask. So let us take some questions. If you just press the button at the bottom right that says reactions, we can recognize you from there.
And Jeffrey, we have a question from Gershon Youngel. Go ahead and.
Oh, let me say also, you can ask your question in Yiddish or English. You will get translation.
Hello, Josh.
Hello.
Das ist mein jüdischer Name. Ja, it's Gershon Yankel, Jerry Tierney. Sehr fein. Ich hab, für was nutzt du dem Wort Gate for wearing? In dem, I have the Poschete in dem letzte Strophe von dein letzte Lied.
Das ist
Nehmen wir noch, kann du verteidigen die Frage?
Oh, I was just wondering what a certain use. I mean, I'm not an I'm not a maven of Yiddish, but I was just curious, as to the usage of that one phrase.
Yeah.
What's the phrase?
I'm using gain for wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just something I heard in conversational speech. Someone would say, "Oh, sie geht da weiß Kleidel heim."
Oh, okay.
Means,
Right.
she's sporting.
Yeah. That's more right. That in that way, it's more. Yes, I get it. And I've been reading I've been reading Yehoish on my own. I just started to. I'm up to the Tower of Babel.
You got a ways to go.
I know. But
no, I should have maybe made clear. The only thing that came from Yehoish was that one phrase, "Nor bloß ton Gerechtigkeit."
Right, but as a songwriter
Yeah.
myself, I don't write much in Yiddish, but it's just interesting to zero in on that, on Yehoish as a resource for ideas, and I mean, it's given me, oh, hey, all right, Anyhow, I don't want to take up that much time, but it's always good to see you.
Good to see
I
you,
love your
Ganesh.
songs, and
Thank you.
Sasha singing that. I mean, hello,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Karen, do we have other questions? Where's Karen?
There are no hands raised right now. Feel free
I'll just
also
go on talking then. I could talk forever. No.
feel free also to share a question in the chat if you're more comfortable with that.
I see a comment from Odin Pasmanik. Oh, that's to me directly. And just asking about Gerechtigkeit. Whether that was a nod in the passage from Yeshaya that's sometime connected with, I mean, Gerechtigkeit is pretty commonly used by the prophets. Micah and Yeshaya, of course, everybody's favorite prophet, uses it a lot. Yeah. What's I find interesting is that that passage from Micah goes on to say and talk about mercy and walking humbly. And someone who's from a Christian background, when I showed this song to them, they said, "Yeah, just only do justice, but you left out the part about mercy and humility." And my answer was, yeah, you can have justice without mercy and humility, but you can't have mercy and humility without justice coming first. And there's usually a tradition of Oisteichen in biblical passages that the order in which things are presented is important. So I took that license not to quote the whole passage.
We have a question from Tony Telemarcus.
Hello, greetings. That's so beautiful. I wonder if you could please speak on the way the melodies are evoked or written down, how when we listen to the scales, I guess is the basic, it affects us, and your choices of how to put the notes together, please.
I think I would say that as Jeffrey read from my bio, I've been listening, singing, teaching, composing Yiddish songs basically all my life, and so I'm not very conscientious when I'm writing them about where the melodic language comes from. It is really my native. I mean, Yiddish wasn't my native speaking language, but it was definitely my native singing language. And so I think that's the best answer I can give. Many songs that had this kind of scale in them were in my ear from an early age. So I think that's where that comes from. And the songs of Camp Boyberick and the Shalom Aleichem Shulas and so forth. By the way, many composers also worked in these educational institutions. One of my singing teachers in Mittelschule was Vladimir Heifetz, who was a marvelous composer and worked in this school teaching the kids. So it's very much in the tradition. Yeah.
If I can make one comment, those 4 songs suggest what your range is. And I encourage people to find out more about that range by responding to Josh's requests about the other music events.
Thank you.
If I may, let's see, we don't have another hand. Oh, is that Harvey Nabulski? Are you raising your hand? Go ahead.
Hi, Josh. I saw you at Yiddish New York. So when you are this wonderful, inspiring program, thank you so much. When you're writing, do you have a particular method that you go to? Are you writing first the story or the lyrics and then moving toward the music, or do you find that you have how is it? Do you have, or does it happen many ways for many songs?
It happens many ways for many songs. It so happens that I have a music notebook, and sometimes if a certain melodic phrase forms in my ear, I'll just write it down because I think it's interesting. Other times I've written a few lines of a text and then found a melody that goes with that. So yes, it happens in different ways. It so happens that about a week before George Floyd was murdered, I had written down a melody of yum bum, yum bum, yum bum, that part of the melody. And it seemed like a natural setting for telling the story, where the extraordinary thing about what happened was the 8.5 minutes, the length of time where that was involved. And so that's how that particular song came about, the connection of words and music. Yeah, that's a kind of an all over the place answer, but that's how it happens.
So wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Is there a plan that you're thinking about making your lyrics available in some kind of publication or online format?
Well, yes. The lyrics to Passengers, to Passagieren, were published in this booklet. So if you want to purchase the CD, you'll get this great booklet, which has the Yiddish oasis and the transliteration and the translation, along with an image for each song. The Play them zusammen is the theatrical presentation will have super titles like they did for Fiddler in Yiddish. And the plans for getting the texts or public recording versions and so forth are still in formation, because we're trying to take it around as a live presentation, as a live theatrical concert. We have a plan for the end of the year, hopefully to bring it to Yiddish New York. And then the Boston Workers' Circle Chorus is very interested in doing a joint concert up in Boston at the very beginning of 2024. So again, these things always depend on raising money, but because we have such a big cast. But yes, eventually the texts will be published. I'm not sure just in what form. Actually, the song about George Floyd was presented at the Brazil's, what do they call it, Festival, a couple of years ago. In fact, the summer after George Floyd was killed. And that was a way of getting it out as well. Yeah.
Josh, the themes that you, as you mentioned at the beginning, the themes that you've touched on, and especially in Playtum Zusammen, resonate differently and again tragically today than they did in 2019. You were mentioning something about incorporating Ukrainian into the production on March 26th. Can you say something about that?
Yes. The Volksbühne has always had super titles in English, and sometimes they also have it in Russian if there's a large enough call for it. This time around, we decided, in fact, the translator who was going to do the Russian, who I had asked to do the Russian, is herself from Kharkiv and escaped near the beginning of Putin's war with her parents in a very dicey escape. I don't know if you know the geography, but Kharkiv is way in the east of Ukraine, so it was a very perilous journey, but they made it out. And she's now living in Germany, in Hamburg. But she told me, listen, I'll do the Russian, but only if I can also do it in Ukrainian. So we had some conversation with the Volksbühne, and we decided, you know what, this is not the kind of material that older Russian Jewish population will be so much interested in, but the younger will be, and they don't necessarily need the Russian super titles. But there are people from Ukraine in New York City that might be able to come to this, and we're doing outreach. So there will be super titles in English and Ukrainian for this program on March 26th. And I see Rivka, who I may give a call after this program. Maybe Rivka has an idea about the Ukrainian immigrants.
And Josh, I think that's wonderful. And I think you're referring to Asya Fruman. Is that correct? As the translator?
Yes. I should have said her name. Asya Fruman, who is a very talented literary worker. She does translations. She writes poetry. She has also been writing some Yiddish songs herself. She's fluent in Russian, Ukrainian, German, English, Yiddish. And I met Asya in 2019 at the original performance, at the premiere performance of Playtum Zusammen. So she was very enthusiastic and we about her doing it. She's marvelous.
Wonderful. And I see we're running to the longest recorded times for our online programs, and for good reason. But I think we could take one more question.
It's too short. So I see Rivka.
And it's too short. Jeffrey, we can take Rivka Abendfeld's question, yes?
Hi. So I wasn't going to say anything, because I'm such a big mouth. But Josh, just for the audience, one of the things, especially that last song about George Floyd, made me think it's in the tradition of the laments that we've heard. It is a lament, and it tells a story, not just telling the story, but lots of commentary in terms of the justice or the injustice. And it reminded me, for the audience, of the song about Hirsch Leckelt. So for the people who don't know who he was, Hirsch Leckelt at the turn of the last century was a shoemaker, an illiterate young Jewish boy who became a member of the Bund and very involved. And if you cast your mind back to the turn of the last century, revolutionaries, people sent to Siberia, lots of injustice. But with you can go look up the whole story, but basically at the end of the day, Hirschleckert sort of couldn't stand it anymore and went and tried to assassinate the governor of Vilna. He didn't succeed. He ended up being executed. And it also led to a discussion which ended up with the Bund and other groups also deciding that violence was not the way forward, even though other groups did adopt violence as a means to an end. So it reminds me of this lament. And did you consciously mean it to be a lament, or is just that what we have in our blood?
Well, it wasn't so much, to be honest, about our blood. It was the crowds. Gas, I was among them. You know, people spontaneously filling the streets, and it was both in grieving and in anger. So that's, I mean, of course, in the back of my mind, I'm aware that there's a long history of, you know, Italian. That's who Hirschleckert was trying to assassinate, was a brutal official, a czarist official in that case.
Italian is a hangman.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Italian is a hangman. And yeah, Italian, and that was a word that was used 100 years ago, 120 years ago, because the difference between a murderer and a hangman is that the hangman is carrying out the business of the state. It's you know, under the color of law. So I think that same awareness came into this situation, but I wasn't thinking. I love the song about Hirschleckert. There are many others. Baruch Schulman was another figure, but yeah, of course. Unfortunately, there's a long history of people whose lives are lost in on the road to a more just world. Yeah.
Are there any more that you see, Karen? She's done. Well, wir willen euch dir herzlich bedanken für das Programm. Sie werden äußerst gewöhnlich und rührendig, und wir wünschen dir Mazel und Nachricht mit den neuen Projekten. We want to thank you very much for this wonderful and moving program, and we wish you success in your future programs and projects. And personally, I'd like to say, Josh, we have to stop meeting like this.
So been good success, Panem. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you all very much for coming, and I think our host can now leave.
Okay, and I want to thank everyone. A great crowd. So I'm thrilled to have been able to meet all of you.
Josh, I want to add my thanks, and I, on behalf of Chicago YIVO and myself, and I also, we've had some gatherings, reunions of this kind, where there's enough audience and enthusiasm that we've left the room open. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording and leave the room open for now in case people want to talk to each other in a completely informal fashion. Again, thank you all for coming, and Josh, thank you for sharing this with us. Looking forward to March 26th.
Thank you, Karen and Jeffrey. Okay.
Okay.